not cold up there on that hill in Patterson.
Yeah, it's a little chilly on some, those last couple of weeks where it was a little 3 degrees or 5 degrees, whatever in the morning, it was a little cold. As far as Betterton, it's still doing pretty good. We have, in fact, taken back the operation and maintenance of our water and wastewater plants. We had another firm do it when our operator needed a, quote, break, but what we found was the operator we hired wasn't up to the level of proficiency we liked. So he's taken it back. We've hired a new employee to help out, and things are still working fine. So that's good. Our biggest concern right now is we have a proposed solar field in Betterton, in the town. It's on the 30-acre farm that wraps around the fire company property. It's a very large 4.99 megawatt, I believe, and it's supposed to use up the entire 30-acre tract, which is where our projected growth for our comprehensive plan was for residential growth. We understand that the firm that's doing the solar field has purchased the property, so they're vested in it. But and we've had conversations with the powers to be in Annapolis, and what we understand is that if the Public Service Commission wants to approve it, they'll approve it. And we have sent letters of concern asking that. We've actually talked to the solar company and asked them to work with us to try to minimize some of the impact. One, we have that area that's usually used for overflow parking for Betterton Day and or for helicopter landings if we have emergency issues, and to leave that area as a set aside. I believe they will work with us on that. But as far as minimizing the amount of solar panels that'll go out there and leaving some of the area for residential growth in the future for the town, that's probably not going to happen, I don't believe. But we're still looking at it, still trying to, we'll go to have a conversation with the Public Service Commission when it comes before them, and we'll go from there. But other than that, we're doing fine.
We'd like to wish we had some better news, but unfortunately, every time we've opposed a solar project, like right out here to Morgue Neck with that very large one there,
Yeah.
we've never had any success. We've spent some money in legal fees and things is about all we've ever accomplished out of it, but
Yeah,
at least they know how we feel about it.
Yeah, it's a shame that you got to spend, if you do it, you've got to spend a lot of tax dollars for legal fees and then not win.
Right.
But it seems that the state's goal right now is to move up in the renewable energy sources, and I can't say I fault them for that. I have solar panels on my house. But
Sure.
maybe placing them in areas where it's not a projected growth area for the last 4 comprehensive plans for the town would be a better thought, but
Absolutely.
I don't get to say.
Well, your Betterton Beach still seems to be a pretty crowded place in the summertime.
Yes, sir, it does, and we're grateful for having the beach monitors that you have during the weekend, the weekends especially. The parking situation is, it's going to be there until it's not, and it's a very popular spot. The holiday weekends are overloaded, but having the beach monitors and the lifeguards there is a blessing. That just helps keep the people from parking on private property and all over the place that they shouldn't have been parking. So, but it's definitely, thank you.
And some of the reports we've got on some of the holidays and stuff, they estimate 1,000 people or so.
At least.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah. And especially if it falls on like I think this year, 4th of July is on the Friday, I believe, maybe. It's going to be a very, very long weekend, so to speak.
And the new bathroom facilities and
Yes.
stuff are well maintained, aren't they? Or
They're, as far as I can tell, yes, they're very well maintained. In fact, we've just gotten a grant to look at engineering design for replacement of those concrete steps, which are up above the bathroom facilities. We've looked at it a number of times, but we've never had any grant application go through that we could replace those. So we did get another design, I think, from the State Highway Administration for possible replacement for design, but it's fine to get the design done, but you still got to have the money to be able to replace them. And that's where, I think those steps have been in there since 1906 or so.
Well,
So they're a patchwork on top of a patchwork.
well, you come down that hill better than I've always said, that's one of the prettiest places in
Yes.
Kent County where you're looking out over where all those rivers, that's a beautiful spot, so.
It is a very, very nice spot, and
Yeah.
that's why I think people come to see it. Aside from being a very nice sandy beach, you can walk out for quite a ways before it really gets any kind of deep water.
Sure.
So it's great for the kids, so. But we do appreciate what you've done for us with, like I said, with lifeguards and the beach monitors. That's really been a help.
Lifeguards, we were pretty, it was okay this year, but sometimes it's pretty challenging to have enough people to do it. We're trying to get more interest in some of the young people here locally becoming lifeguards, and I think we've made some headway with some of it, so.
Yeah.
Because we got the beach, obviously, the community center, we got a pool in Millington, a pool in Rock, a little pool in Rock Hall.
Yeah.
But,
Right.
so it
Yeah.
takes quite a number
Yeah.
of them, but anyhow, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? You know where I'm at.
Okay.
Stay in touch, and if you need something from the county, don't hesitate to come to us.
I know the numbers, all of them. Thank you very much.
Have a good day. Mayor Carroll, I saw you come in. Why don't you come on up?
Hey there, how are you?
John, good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you for having us. Appreciate it. So I will say fiscally, we're in a pretty good spot with Galena. I saw, the writing on the wall, a lot of things are going to be changing, coming down the pike from the top to the bottom in government. And so we had a few folks retire. We decided not to refill those positions right now and just kind of see how things go. Our staff's pretty qualified. They're taking control of the situations on things. Couple of things we have been working on over the last couple of years. Our former maintenance and facilities coordinator, Warren Walters, had taken on a project of creating a temporary housing, emergency shelter type facilities for the north part of the county, kind of getting some plans together to utilize the St. Dennis's rec center area as well as parts of the elementary school if were to be needed. We've gotten pretty far along with that. We're at the point of now just starting to draft some MOUs for the different parties together. But one of the missions he was working towards was trying to find funding for a generator to power, for emergency power in time of need for some lighting, refrigerators, or things like that. As we explored different options for grants and things related to that, we kind of found that it might be a smarter path, instead of buying a generator that stays put in one place and it's only used in that one emergency that may occur, to wire the buildings, which we've applied for grants from Chop Tank Electricity for this, from their foundation, to wire them to have a plug outside so that a mobile generator could be plugged in. And this, one of those things where it'd be like basically a 50 kilowatt generator that would be on a trailer that can move around. And we felt that this might be something maybe the county should look at purchasing going forward, because this could be utilized in any of the municipalities or in the county in an event of an emergency and taken to be used where needed versus spending $35,000 or $40,000 and something just stays there in one place.
Right.
Now, typically with a generator of this size, I know Generac has some that come already built onto a trailer, 50 kilowatt. It's roughly around $35,000 is kind of what I'm finding for that. So that would be really one of our, I guess, our only fiscal request is for the county to look into that. That then would be shared use as needed through county emergency services. And then if we were to activate our shelter in a time of need, that we would call upon the county to bring that over and to plug in to power the resources as needed. I came a couple of years ago and talked with you guys about some grant match for a walking trail that we're looking at connecting the town to Toll Park and eventually down to Georgetown, which most of that all runs through the county there. You guys were able to give us the $20,000 in match. We matched that with our $20,000 in funds from our ARPA funds. And we got the grant. We hired a contractor, an engineering firm. They have finished their concept plans, and by next month, they should be pretty much finished their engineering from getting it from the walking trail from basically People's Bank at the edge of Galena down to Georgetown, I'm sorry, down to Toll Park with full engineering and SHA's green light, to move on it. Obviously, we'll need funding long-term on that. But what I would rather do with this part of that project, being that we got to see kind of what the fiscal picture is going to be coming down from different grant sources, is once we have that, is meet with you guys and your Public Works Department and maybe your different division heads or whoever, to present what they put together. I know you guys have a much larger capability or staffing than we do for handling a project of that size, and then figure out what would be the path forward in, maybe not in this fiscal year, but the following fiscal year of where to do with that. I think that'd be a really great economic development driver, because that's a big thing. I was just moving around and visiting some different towns in Cecil County yesterday. And that was the biggest thing. Everybody says we have these beautiful waterfront areas, all these marinas. How do we get those people from there to come up into our communities and spend money and use our resources and our assets? And also with Toll Park, that is a beautiful park, county-owned park there, but it's really underutilized because there's not really a connection. You can drive to it, but there's nothing else really in between and a way for kids to get there and people to get there. So I think that's something we can long-term kind of talk about with that. The big thing we're finding in our town right now is, obviously, it's just growth, talking about that. And we're working through those details. So I do thank you guys for, listening to me when we came in for our hearing on our annexation. We're still working through the annexation agreement to finalize that with all the parties. If they come to the terms that we need, we'll pursue that further.
So it hasn't,
Officially been signed, yes.
gotcha.
We've got a couple drafts that have gone back and forth with the landowner in the town, and until it comes to the council's full consensus that we agree with the terms, we don't do anything.
Gotcha.
That's the time you do it in the annexation agreement is.
And was there a
is
number of
these things.
homes that was anticipated to go there?
Not specifically, no. Right now, I have about 150 EDUs available roughly between water and sewer.
I gotcha.
So that kind of maximizes what you have available right there.
And it's about 100 acres.
In total, the whole property, 25 roughly of it is already in the town limits. So they're want to bring the rest of the 70 in. And a developable of that is only about 50 in total. So, not a lot really. 50 acres isn't a whole lot by the time you put streets, roads, stormwater, and everything else with it, so. But it gives us a growth area long-term to look at too, is that creates our economic destiny too, as a community, to look through. But those things take a long time. It's not gonna happen tomorrow. And I wasn't anticipating this to happen tomorrow.
You're exactly right.
I'd rather do it right, take my time and do it right with anything. The big issue I'm getting from a lot of the residents and just folks I'm hearing it everywhere in every community around the state is utility rates. And I know you are just like us. We can't necessarily dictate that, but I'm asking that question everywhere I go about the utility rates issues. Myself, I had an electric bill in my house, almost $1,000.
I hear it, you're right. Every place you go, people are complaining about those utility rates. And
Yeah.
when you see something almost double, that really gets your attention.
And then even for the municipality, the wastewater treatment plant, it went up almost double for what our costs are to operate that. And that it impacts the county as well with our shared use agreement on that one. So for operations and maintenance, so it's going to be a big fiscal change. So I know for budgeting wise, we're going to have to really look at utilities as a big issue here.
So speaking about the wastewater treatment plant that we have a joint effort in, is it, everything going, other than the electric bill?
Well, that's actually the next thing I was going to get to, my final point. So the plant's doing great. There's not really any major issues with that. operations, and actually it was the good thing this year, you guys actually owed us a little bit in our operations and
Oh,
maintenance
now, wait a
agreement.
minute, we got,
For once. Usually we end up owing, $10,000. But we didn't this time. But the biggest issue we have to do is with the Georgetown collection system. So the county's portion of the collection system that comes into ours and then gets treated at the plant, there are, 4 now. One just hooked on last week in the county side of EDUs that need to be used up, but there's 4 still that MDE met with us. I think with your Public Works Department and myself and our Public Works, we met with MDE folks about 2 months ago on this, 4 connections that need to be connected on the county side. It wasn't imminent that they were coming down on us and cracking a whip, but the plant comes up for the renewal of the permit next year. So I'm the one on the permit, so I need to make sure those are getting done. But the biggest one is Georgetown, the yacht basin, or yacht haven down there that we need to make sure are getting that one on, because that was a really big one from MDE that they wanted to make sure they were connected to the wastewater treatment system.
gotcha.
So I think that's a big one, if you guys can help us with that one, and if you need assistance, pretty much everybody that was on the list that was still outstanding, I know them all personally, that we can, remind them that they need to be hooked onto this system, or if we're gonna have to go back with MDE and renegotiate that somehow. So, but thank you guys, honestly, for everything you do, appreciate.
I would like to follow up about the generator, because I've attended a lot of your
Yes.
meetings regarding the shelters.
Yes.
And it's my understanding that Public Works has one on a trailer,
They have one. We were requesting there be a second, in case there was a larger
Right.
emergency.
but I mean, until we are able to address that,
Yes,
just don't forget that they do have.
yes, that is available. Yes, I do know that. Yep.
And this is a small thing, but I remember, and it's been a while ago, there was, at the little church at Olivet Hill,
Olivet Hill, yes.
there was an issue, you had needed a request to help clean up maybe it didn't come, I don't know whether it come from the town or some of the people.
So.
But the graveyard, the little grave site was
graveyard,
all growed
yes.
up and everything.
Yep.
We were glad to do it, but there was something we wanted to get clear that with the owner or the owners or,
And that's the whole thing. So one of our staff members from the town, she's kind of taken that upon herself as her own personal project.
I got you.
And she reached out to lots of different parties to help with that. Because during the fall, we had our Veterans Day ceremony, and we were honoring a veteran who was actually buried in that cemetery. But you couldn't even find his headstone. It was so overgrown
wow.
out there, and trees had fallen down everywhere. So we were able to find a local tree company to come in, and they did it for free, take some of the brush away. But it's still a long process, and she's in the initial stages of trying to form a 501c3 type nonprofit organization that can take over the long-term maintenance and do some of the historical cleanup and things out there. There's no trustees left of it anymore. The Methodist Church, until we called them and said, hey, do you guys own it? Oh, we didn't even realize this was still here. And they're willing to give it to anybody.
We got a request to try, see if we could help clean it up, but then
Yes.
there was some underlying issues
And
that
that's kind of where we were. We had to explore that
couldn't
further.
do anything for you, but
Yeah.
if you get some of those straight and you need some help, please call us.
Definitely. Hopefully she'll have something within the next 6 months or so kind of formed. She's started with the articles of incorporation to try to get that, and then once we have that, then she'll be able to get it transferred from the Methodist Church to this organization.
Very good.
Yep. So, well, thank you guys. I appreciate it. And
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me go a little early. Appreciate it.
Kevin, Mayor Hemstock from Millington?
Thanks for letting me speak, although I really didn't have a whole lot prepared. I did want to announce that the first work was done on was started yesterday on the senior housing.
They actually broke ground.
Well, I think they're just putting, silt fences or whatever around,
Okay, well,
and getting the prep started. It's winter, it's cold, and I understand sometimes construction projects can be impacted by the cold and the winter and all that stuff, but in any case, this is great news. And so that's what I bring to this table is good news. I didn't really come to beg for money or anything like that because, well, I came really to thank you for what you've given us and helped us with for that project. And it's been, as you know, it's been a long haul. We've been dealing with this thing for 15 years, and it's finally moving.
Mayor, just for the people that's visiting with us at this meeting, why don't you highlight what that project is real quick?
Well,
Because I'm not sure everybody knows about
it's
it.
on the grounds of the old elementary school, and the school building itself will be used for more of a community business kind of center associated with the senior housing that will be built around that. That's 52 units. It's not assisted living, that's just senior housing for those 55 and older. And we have already, believe it or not, we've got a list of people who are interested in being housed in those units. So, very exciting. We're looking at probably a year to see some buildings going up. What we're doing right now is the prep work, the groundwork, installing sewer and water lines, that kind of thing, power. And so it is moving along, and we're excited by that. But there again, couldn't have done it without your help. And obviously, we've gotten grants from you funneled a grant to us. I think was it $1.2 million?
$1,536,000 actually.
Thank you.
Not that we're keeping.
Not that you're
count of
keeping
it.
track or anything, I get it. Anyway, couldn't have done it without that. And that was a bridge grant.
Right, and to
help
be
us with the
clear,
state.
that's not for the housing itself, or for the senior house. We were allowed to do that for the infrastructure. It's gonna,
Correct.
that $1.5 million will go for roads, water, sewer, internet, whatever, electric lines,
And there actually will be a
what they call the
little,
horizontal stuff, I think, is the
Exactly.
way the
and
experts
we
speak
couldn't have
about
started it without your help. And and we appreciate that. There actually will be a little street network in there. By the way, we've got, we were picking out street names not too long ago, so trying to figure out what to call those little streets that will separate the units, I guess. So it's all exciting, and it's been, like I say, it's been a long, long haul. So anyway, that's going on, and whether, perhaps it's not favored by all, but we have a marijuana dispensary that's going to open up any minute, as soon as the state gives their final nod. And what is exciting about that is, number one, it's going to employ 18 people to start with. So it's an employment thing. It's, however you look at it, it's economic development in Millington.
Yeah,
We'd like to see that. Ironically, catty corner across the street in the old Florist building, there's a private drug and alcohol counseling service going in. I don't know if there's any,
connection there.
but it's good. There again, it's happening, and it's kind of upscale. I mean, I'm really kind of tickled with that. So, and they're moving on it. They're putting a new facade on that building and new siding, new roof, and so that'll be interesting. So we've got, I mean, there are things that are happening. Of course, you all are planning the sewer plant that will probably feed some development, and I think that is moving along. I haven't had an update on that in a while.
We had one about, I'm gonna say 6 weeks, 2 months ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, and, everything takes that, it takes a long, I could never be a developer, I don't have the patience for it, because seems like it takes
Exactly.
forever, but, the idea that your former plant is in a flood zone, and we have experienced it flooding on 2 different occasions during hurricanes, that it's a good idea to get it out of there and get this new one built, because as you were about to point out, I don't want to steal your thunder, but
Oh, no,
there's
no.
some real development that's proposed on 301 there, 2 distribution centers that's supposed to hire 150 people per building. That's 300 new jobs at a place, those kind of places for Little Kent County, that's unheard of. I mean, other than I mean, that's a pretty big deal.
That is a big deal. So,
And I guess you're aware, right down the road where the 301, where the
where the recycling,
recycling building.
thought I saw.
Well, yeah, that's right. That company, Avail,
Yes,
is
exactly.
going to go there and open up and hire 45.
They've got a big
Another 45 jobs there.
employment
So
base, so that's very exciting.
that 301 corridor's kind of got some exciting things in the future.
Yeah, it's going to pop at some point. We know it, you know it, and hence the reason for the sewer plant to support that development. And, you
And we
know,
really think that if people start working there, some of them's going to want to live there, some of them's going to want to eat there, so this hopefully will generate some growth in that area.
exactly. So anyway, that's exciting. And, you know, it's kind of like if you build it, they will come, and I think
We'll
that.
see.
And I'm sure that will also feed commercial development in that area, whether it's, you know, the residential, the increased employment base, residential development will feed commercial development. And hopefully, I know you all, the county, needs to have that, some growth in the tax base to afford the, you know, Kerwin and things like that. And I think that, I see that is where it's going to happen. No question about that. So we've got a lot of things going on. We've got our problems, no doubt about it. We've got our water system is leaky, and we had a leak that started around Thanksgiving that was right across the street from my house, and it literally bubbled out of the ground, out of the road actually, and formed this constant flow. I began to call it Comegys Creek, because it was on Comegys Street. And my dogs had to change the way they walked because it was too deep for my little Chihuahua to go through. So that is an example of some of the things we are dealing with this system. All I can say is it was poorly built, and that's what we're dealing with now, where the problems are sprouting up. And I think you all probably know the history to that thing. So it's pricey. One of those leaks can cost $30,000 to fix,
Yeah.
and you know, that's a huge impact to the utility budget, and it's you know, the users have to pay for it. That's a user fee issue, and so we had to raise utility rates for this year's budget. We had to we increased taxes a little bit because we hadn't done so in, I think, a decade, and you know, we all have to do it, and you guys go through that process too, I get it. So I didn't really come here to beg for money, because you all have been plenty helpful, and we appreciate it, and that's what I wanted to do, is express my appreciation for that, and representing the town's appreciation for that, all of that.
Well, we appreciate all you do for up there to keep things running.
Yeah, we're holding up the east end, is what we're doing, so anyway. That's about all I have, and unless you have any questions.
John?
I'm good.
Appreciate the,
And it's good news that there's some silt fence going up there.
so,
I said it's good news that there's some silt fence going around that project up
yeah,
there.
they're starting, I'm sure the storm will slow them down a little bit, but
Yeah, sure
after
will.
that, I'm sure they're turning dirt and digging holes, so.
Very good.
I've been waiting for this for 10 years. So, anyway, thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Let us know if something comes up that we can help you with.
I will. It's like Don said, we know your number. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Foster?
Thank you.
I don't think, nobody here from the town of Rock Hall, I don't believe I've seen anybody come in here. No.
While she's setting this up, I just really want to thank you for arranging this meeting, and we too were very appreciative of the things that Kent County has done for us over the years, and particularly last year, putting forward money for a public restroom there, which will be very important for many of the festivals that we have right there on High Street, and also working relationship on the dog-house and this sort of thing, and it really is appreciated.
Mayor, I don't mean to interrupt you, but before you start, you mentioned the bathrooms that we allocated some money
Right,
towards.
about $80,000, we appreciate that.
80?
Yes.
Yeah. Are they underway? I mean, are we moving forward with
We are
that? 'Cause-
definitely moving forward to it. The good news was that at the time we requested that, it was projected to cost considerably more, and our town manager was able to find architects and engineers for much less expensive one that will still meet the need. So
We had heard that they were going to be more expensive than what you thought, and we thought it was just, we had never heard how that worked out.
Right, right.
Okay.
We'll try to give you a more detailed update on it, but main thing is we appreciate it and it is moving.
No, that's fine.
Good, thank you. Also, I really want to thank Commissioner Price for coming to the workshop we had a couple of weeks ago. I thought it was a very productive discussion there. And Mr. Fithian, I recall the first time I met you was about a dozen years ago. At that point, I was a river keeper. You were town manager of Rock Hall. And we sat side by side watching the economist Anirban Basu talk about the economic value of the Chester River. And I really appreciated your reaching out, learning from economists on economic development and on the resource and the analysis he was doing. Seems like we're set, except I need to know how I move forward here.
So I just wanted to let you know there was a compatibility with your device.
Okay, and is this
So this is your presentation.
Is this the one I gave you last week or the one I had today?
I do not have access to that because of the compatibility issue.
Okay,
So
okay.
I'm going to put these here.
All right,
Down.
all right. Thank you,
And I'm going to grab a microphone for you.
thank you. I have been told that I often speak a little too softly. Please hold up your hands if I'm...
Is that impeding your?
No,
Sight.
no, that's
Okay.
fine. But wait, I need to know so this is the control?
Yeah, and you're
Okay.
going to, so to get to the next
All
screen,
right,
you're
we'll-
going to hit that.
Okay, okay, we'll go back here just a moment. Want to emphasize that I'm not here today to ask for favors, for handouts, for another bathroom, this sort of thing. I am asking for very serious consideration of some long-standing problems that we've had here. And part of it, a big part of it, has to do with I think, reluctance may be a way to say, the delay in giving serious consideration to a tax differential or tax rebate. And as I'm going to show in the course of this program, that virtually every other county, 90% of the counties, 90% of the towns are treated better in terms of the tax policy than Chestertown is. And our residents, your constituents in Chestertown, want to know why. And they have lots of questions on that. But I'm going beyond just the fairness question, because as I'll demonstrate, not only is that affecting Chestertown, we believe it's affecting the overall economic development of Kent County. Kent County now imposes the highest property taxes anywhere on Delmarva and the highest taxes on municipalities anywhere in Maryland. You have access to the same data that I do. You have access to the same list of county taxes, town taxes, and you can verify that. We believe this is not only unfair to the people and businesses of our towns, but harmful to the economy of all of Kent County. Our economic growth rate is now one of the worst in Maryland. We just barely got beat out by Allegheny County, and if you're not familiar, really is part of Maryland's Appalachia, and they had a negative growth rate during the past 20 years. The span of time I looked at was from 2001 to 2023, and let me see if we have that. Here's a graph of it. You'll see there the blue line at the top is the United States economic growth rate. The red line is Maryland's, And down at the bottom, the green line is Kent County's. We're really lagging far, far behind, and I think we need to ask ourselves every day, what can we do to improve that? And I have a couple of ideas. My fear is that we've really gotten ourselves in a vicious cycle. The higher the property taxes, the less investment, the fewer the job opportunities, the smaller our tax base, and then particularly if along comes a recession like 2008 or COVID like 2019, or having to build a new middle school, our only recourse when our economic base is so low is to raise the taxes again, and we're going to be in that loop of a vicious cycle. Look a moment. We had two this is kind of a synopsis of where I'm going here. We had two studies done by the University of Maryland, independent body, to look at this issue of tax differential and whether whether Chestertown was being overtaxed in this process. Both studies, the first one was done in 97. This was by Margot Bailey, who contracted with the University of Maryland, and they confirmed over and over that we were being overtaxed, particularly for police and for street maintenance. Basically, people often refer to it as double taxation because people in Chestertown pay taxes for their own police, their own street maintenance, their own parks, their own planning and zoning, and then they turn around out of the goodness of their heart and also pay for that in non-municipal areas where all three of our county commissioners live. And the question is, why is it that people in the non-municipal areas don't also help pay for our streets, for our police, sort of thing? And we're still looking for answers to that. The Maryland Department of Legislative Services shows that there are really only 3 counties in Maryland that still, after 40 years, have not developed a system where they can compensate the business owners, the residents in Chestertown for that double taxation. Again, the highest taxes are posed on the area that really should be your engine of economic development. I just don't understand why anybody would want to do that. It's like if Fithian was back as a waterman, and he went out there and he looked and said, who's the best person here? Who's catching the most fish or crabs or oysters? And then said, let's penalize him. Let's tax him more. I don't think you would have done that. But somebody has thought that was the way to go in Chestertown. And let's look a moment at Chestertown. It takes up less than 1% of the land in Kent County. I'm going to argue is the most productive 3 square miles, a little less than 3 square miles in the entire county. We provide 17% of your property taxes, 26% of your income taxes. Even more, for every dollar Chestertown receives in property tax, Kent County receives $2.37. For every dollar in income tax, Kent County receives $4.88. This is not a zero-sum game. What benefits Chestertown benefits all of Kent County, and vice versa. What hurts us hurts you. Let's look a minute at the income levels. Surprising to most people, this is the median household income. And despite, we've all seen the big fancy houses along Water Street and High Street, but I assure you, look at this audience here, it's not just the people on Water Street and High Street who care about this problem, okay? Median household income is actually the lowest in Kent County. There are other pockets of poverty, but amongst your towns, it's the lowest, okay? And where is the highest? See down at the bottom? The non-municipal household income is $83,000. Okay? So what we're really seeing here is that the
incomes in the non-municipal areas are 77% higher than in the municipal ones. And there I kind of lumped Chestertown in with all the rest. If you had just compared Chestertown to the non-municipal, it's 87% higher out in the county. Why would you penalize the most productive area and also the lowest income area in order to provide services out in the county when the people out in the county have never seen fit to help pay for our police, never seen fit to help pay for our roads? I'm going to be asking you questions. I want you to feel free to ask me. This is really a discussion.
Well, I just might interrupt you for one
That's
second.
fine. No, I'm happy for it. Yeah.
Okay, when you talk about the high taxes,
Yes,
if you go back 24 years ago,
okay.
and I'm not arguing the fact of the
I've only been here
tax rate.
27 years, so that's fine. Yeah.
I'm not arguing about that our tax rate is what it is. I mean, but if you go back for the last 24 years, our tax rate is, we have raised taxes and we have lowered taxes. But from 24 years ago, our tax rate is 1 cent higher today than it was 24 years ago.
Okay. It is still the highest.
Assessments go up, and that's
No,
the
I
state
understand.
sets
Yep,
that.
right.
And that's what we've been living off of. But as far as us, the county, raising our tax rate, it's been raised 1 cent in the last 24 years.
Okay. Nonetheless,
I'm not arguing that
okay,
your part.
okay. We have the highest taxes in District 36, the highest on the Eastern Shore, and the highest in Delmarva, and the highest on municipalities in Maryland. What we've got to ask ourselves, is that really consistent with our goals of economic development, or should we readjust a little bit and see if that's hurting us?
And one thing I think is worth mentioning is that many, many years ago, before John Price and Ronnie Fithian was here, the county decided that one of their the major part of Kent County was we're an agricultural center.
Right.
87% of our land mass
I think it's even
is
89.
is
Yeah.
zoned ag,
Yeah, right.
of which the state sets the tax rate on that, and it's rated at a lower level simply because farmers have to have a lot of land in order to have a productive farm, and so they get a break on their land, and I understand why, but
Right.
that's a pretty significant
It
number
is a-
too. 87% of our land mass is zoned agriculture.
I absolutely agree with
Right.
you. But the challenge that presents to us, if we're going to zone 89% for agriculture, it's all the more important that we know what we're doing and we're doing the best we can with that other 11%. Okay? You can't devote 89% to agriculture and then pose the highest taxes in the state on that remaining 11% and expect to have economic growth. Let's look at employment for just a moment. Now, when you and I were young, and I used to come over here actually
I
beginning.
can't remember that.
You don't remember young?
Okay.
Okay. I came as a child. My dad was an ag professor at the University of Maryland. He worked with the county agents out here. I would come, Kent, Queen Anne's, Talbot County. And at that point, agriculture and fishing were one of the biggest employers in the area. Anybody know what the percent employed by agriculture is today in Kent County? It's actually, if you combine agriculture and fishing and hunting, all three together, it's only 6%. We can't expect to provide employment for our young people when we're devoting 89% to agriculture and overtaxing the commercial and residential areas. It's just not going to work. We can't attract the businesses that we need.
Are you advocating then that we rezone a lot of Kent County and start developing it instead of farmland?
No,
Because I'm not sure how far that would go.
I'm not.
Okay.
In 1997, Governor Glendenning developed a coalition of people who recognized they wanted to have economic development, but at the same time, they wanted to preserve the agricultural areas, preserve the wildlife habitat. So what would they do? They would set up the municipalities and areas like your 301 corridor and Wharton as priority funding areas, and the idea was to attract businesses into those areas, not to have urban sprawl, not to destroy that, but to attract them in. And what I'm saying is that when you put the highest taxes on that remaining 11%, you're destroying the chance of doing that. In fact, you're encouraging urban sprawl. You're encouraging people to locate outside of the towns. We've got to turn that back. Kent County, recognize that policy. You designated Chestertown, Rock Hall, Betterton, Galena, Millington, all as priority funding areas, but you've turned us into a priority taxing area. We can't attract business. Let me give you just one example. And my other slide set has this more clearly, but I will talk through it. Right now, our friend, our neighbor, and our competitor, Centerville, just down the road, okay? And interestingly, Queen Anne's County waited 30 years to actually adopt a tax differential. But what they've done is that they have given a tax differential to people who live in Centerville of 15%, okay? That lowers their property tax down to 0.7. What is our property tax on the county property tax? 1.022. It means that our county tax in Chestertown is 46% higher than in Centerville. How do you expect us to compete with Centerville with that? We can't do that. We've got smart people. We've got very talented people. But it's like trying to climb that hill with an anchor on your neck. We can't do it. If you're serious about wanting to keep tax, to be able to move this forward, we've got to re-examine this. And I'm going to take you through how some other places have looked at it. Here's the data on the 6% employment. We come on down. This snowplow, I'm going to pause for a moment just to admire it. Okay? That snowplow, county snowplow that these people help pay for, comes right up to the boundary of Chestertown, and it turns around and goes the other way. I feel like Ronald Reagan. I paid for that snowplow. Now, why is it we help pay for that snowplow, but the people in the non-municipal areas don't pay anything for the snowplow in Chestertown? I don't understand that. I don't think any of us do. Let's look a moment at local government services. And this Venn diagram, on the green side is county services, education, social services, library, general government, public health. We appreciate all that you do there. We really do. On the right-hand side, the light green, we have trash collection, general administration, water, sewer, and marina. Those are things that we do. We don't expect any help from the county on them. Down the middle is this area of contention. These are the parallel services.
But Dave, when you talk about the part in the light yellow, the public safety.
Right.
I mean, John could probably tell you better than me, but if I'm not mistaken, I think 60% of our calls are in the town of Chestertown.
I think you need to
Want to put
sit.
a price to that 60% of those calls?
I'd like for
Should we do that?
Hickman and Dickerson to sit down and make a presentation to you on it. I think we have a wonderful working
No,
relationship.
I think what I'm getting at is you're saying, and you're kind of saying that we don't do anything for you.
No, I'm not.
I'm saying, I think we do a whole lot for you that we don't get credit for.
Okay.
And we've got a list that we could go over one at a time.
We
right
look
here.
forward to seeing that list,
Okay.
and we have a list as well, I assure you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I will say, before we get into that list, the idea of the police protection and the roads, if that's the only two areas that you're talking about, then we had this conversation with some very intelligent people here earlier in the day, Mr. Sobers and Mr. Chris Jennings, who were sort of on opposite sides to some degree, but they were saying the same thing. It might be more constructive, and I, for the life of me, can't imagine if I was in your place that I wouldn't have probably had this conversation earlier. Maybe the discussion should be, how do we work with the Chestertown Police and the county police to cut down, I mean, do we have too many police? Do we have, could join in them together somehow? I don't know. I'm not an expert in that field, but my problem is, we've never had that conversation.
We have.
I've never been a part of it.
I sat down with John Price. I've also sat down with Sheriff Hickman. We've sat down with Dixon, Chief Dixon of the police. We currently have 9 police, but the
Well, now,
FBI.
somebody just told us in here earlier it was 11 or 13 or something.
No, if you look at the FBI standards for a town our size, it would be about 12 or 13. We do not have that many. We haven't had them for years. I'll show you the dollar amount in a few minutes that we spend on this.
But if we respond to 60% of them, that's a contribution.
It's a
I mean, don't
contribution.
make it sound like we don't do anything, because that.
No. I think they have a wonderful relationship.
I think they do,
Hickman
too.
And Nixon, and we very much appreciate that. But it is the police who are the first responders in Chestertown, well over 95%, okay? They sometimes can call for assistance, but I would be really, I will talk with anyone. Everybody here, I have talked with them individually, and I haven't yet met Mr. Jennings, but I'm happy to talk with him. But in addition to that discussions, please, let's get the facts on the table so we're not just arguing back and forth, oh, I do more, you do more. Come on, we can lay out the numbers. Okay.
And Mayor, before you go on, notably, I have not said a lot at this point, only because I've seen this presentation previously, and I want to give you the opportunity to present it again publicly
appreciate
here
that.
without interruption. But since I've seen that presentation, I've been working on some things with our Chief Financial Officer and Commissioner Fithian. So, I mean, I think when you conclude what you're talking about, out of respect to you, then I think, I'm all about engaging in.
Absolutely, wonderful.
And
No,
asking,
I appreciate that, sir.
asking questions, but I wanted to give you the respect to have
I appreciate that.
uninterrupted,
Well, no, but I also want you to feel free to ask questions as we go along. That's fine.
but I think when you conclude, I think we can have a very good conversation about where all this falls.
I look forward to it. Thank you, sir.
So that's why I haven't said anything.
No, that's
A
fine,
lot.
that's fine. This is a summary of town expenditures. This does not include our water and sewer, but I want you to look at the 2 lower quadrants there, public safety and public works. Well over 2/3 of our expenditures in these areas. I want to note that on public safety, that includes the pensions, it includes the vehicles there, so it may. Public works, certainly, I'm not aware that we have received in the 7 years that I've been either on the council or mayor, that we've received any assistance from the county on that. Public safety, yes, there's a close working relationship between the sheriff and the police. We appreciate that. I cannot say, I have no data on how much time the sheriff spends there. I know that they do come in, and we appreciate that. But in terms of if somebody calls for help, it's the local police that are the first responders. This is all covered by Kent County for non-municipal residents. So look down here, a moment. This is the Chestertown property tax paid. And if you look there, you'll see, oh, we're actually fairly competitive with other towns, keeping our expenditures low. But what happens when you add the county load on top of that? So now, rather than being one of the lowest, most efficient, we're jumped up. We're more expensive than 4 of our competitors there. This is the slide on, and again, slightly different presentation than I expected, but want us to focus on Chestertown. You'll see the 0.4332, you then add on the county tax, and it becomes 1.4552. We jump from being one of the lowest to one of the highest. And if you were to go through the entire thing, I think you will search in vain to find another town that has to carry the weight of such a high county tax on it. Here's a comparison, a little closer view, Centerville versus Chestertown, okay? Again, there are friends, there are neighbors, and there are competitors. We're asking for an even playing field, and you're not giving it to us. I want to walk you through a little bit on the history of what's often referred to as tax set-off system or differentials, tax rebates. Started back in the 1960s and 70s. And Annapolis was suing Anne Arundel, and Laurel was suing Prince George's. And the judges gave some good news and bad news. One was, the good news was that the counties have been saying, oh, we don't have a right to have different county taxes in different areas. And the judge said, oh, yes, you do. You can sit down with your local officials there in those towns, and you can adjust that county tax rate based on what they provide for themselves. And you can have different rates all over the county, if you so choose. A little more complicated, but you'd be amazed to find how many counties have been able to do that complication and handle it quite well. But the bad news was, the judge said, but this is a job for the legislature, not for the Justice Department. Then in 1984, a young man at that time, you may know him as former Senator Cardin, he was the youngest Speaker of the Maryland House of Delegates. And he and his colleagues decided, it really wasn't good to have towns suing counties and counties countersuing and hollering back and forth at each other. There ought to be a better way. And what they sought to have back in 1984 was to require every county to sit down, discuss, as we're discussing here. And then what they wanted to have initially was for all of them then to reach agreement as to what would be the fair tax on those municipalities. Then before that legislation passed, a number of counties, some on the Eastern Shore, some on the Western Shore, said, give us more time. We know what's best for our county. Just give us a little more time to work that out. And so they did. Some were ready. Those were the green counties. I want you to know some are urban, some are rural, some are rich, some are poor. But there were 8, and then later, 9 green counties, 9 that said, all right, we'll go for it. And the others all agreed, and it's state law, they will sit down, as we are now, and discuss it, hope to reach resolution, and, interestingly, many of them did. There was what the lawyers refer to as an evolving consensus on this, that it was more equitable and it was good for business. A few years later, look at that. Even more of them decided more equitable, it's fair, but Kent County said, give us more time. And again, and Kent County said, give us more time. Ladies and gentlemen, that was 40 years ago.
You're not hardly going to blame me for that, are you?
No, but I am. Just a moment.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong. One time when we asked why, You said this is the way it's always been and the way it will always be. Do I have that quote right?
No, I don't. Listen, you're right about one thing. This is the way it's always been.
Been for 40 years.
But I didn't set that standard
No, no, no.
from day one.
But are you saying now
Their
it's the way it'll
argument-
always be?
My argument has always been that we provide a lot of services and a lot of money into the town of Chestertown, besides doing it in the, listen, I just took one example,
Sure.
which I think is clear, that every county does things. That's why when it was taken to court, this issue, that it was thrown out of court, because there is no set way that every county has to treat its municipalities. For example, we collect the hotel tax for anybody that rents a room, no matter where it's at in Kent County, we collect the money. Then we return it to the jurisdiction where it was paid.
I think you take off a handling fee, but yes, you
We
do.
take 5%
Right,
administrative fee, I think, and then the rest of it goes
Right.
back to the town.
And we appreciate that.
A lot of counties, more than not, keep that money and use it for advertising and
number
stuff
on
to
that?
create tourism and economic development. We don't do that. We give it directly back to the town. So there's just no set way. We created, and John was a sheriff and I was a county commissioner back we were first both elected in '94. Sometime in the latter part of that first term, we decided that all of our ambulances and stuff would run primarily by volunteers. And we said it was time that we work ourselves into a paid group where we have paramedics, EMTs. When somebody calls for service, they get trained people on the scene.
And that's wonderful. We
It is
appreciate
wonderful. We started with a half of a deputy, and every year after that, we hired whatever we could afford. Instead of breaking the bank, going in it head over heels, we built ourselves to where we can now say that we have paid paramedics on call 24 hours a day in 3 destinations in the county: Galena, Chestertown, and Rock Hall. That come at about a $2 million price tag. 52% of those calls are in the town of Chestertown. My argument is, if you go down the list and you look at the services that the county provides to the town free of charge, I think you make out better than if we got a tax differential.
Well, I
That's
appreciate-
my whole argument.
Okay, well, I appreciate very much your recommendation there, however. That's exactly what we asked the University of Maryland to study.
Just for
And they looked at it in
clarification.
1997,
Just for
and they looked at it in 2024.
Before you go, John, I want to clarify one thing. I misspoke when I said 60% of our police calls were in here. It was 30-some%. It's almost 60% of these EMS paramedic calls.
Okay.
I apologize.
The number that Commissioner Fithian is referring to, if I'm correct, because I've asked for this to be done, and our finance department and department heads have done this. It's actually 52% of the call volume for medical-related services is within the municipalities.
Within all 5.
With all five,
All
not
five
just Chestertown.
municipalities.
Okay.
I mean, we
okay.
do have a breakdown by municipality,
Right, right.
but that is the total
Right.
on the cover sheet.
Frankly, I'm a numbers guy. I really am. I'm an analyst. That's what I've worked on throughout my life. I'm quite happy to sit down with the numbers. What I don't like is, I do more than you do more and whatever. Let's get it down. And that's what we sought to do and what Margot Bailey sought to do by having that study done in '97 and what we did just last year. What disappointed the hell out of me is after we'd done that study and after 2 commissioners promised to support it, for the longest time, they refused to read it at all. I don't understand that. Again, I'm a numbers guy. Maybe there's something else. Why would somebody refuse to read a study of this type? You may read it, disagree with it. Our numbers, our analyst, sat down with Pat Merrick, went back and forth through the numbers. I think we offered to try to answer any questions we could. But I do believe that you're absolutely right. We should sit down and look at the numbers and see what they tell us. Not the rumors of numbers, but the numbers themselves. Some of this gets complicated, but what I'm saying is, please look at all of the counties that figured out a way to do it. Are you telling me we're less capable than the 20 other counties that accomplished that? Are we that different from the rest of them that we can't do it? Right now, according to their study, and maybe you'll disagree, but I'd love to know where, we are overtaxing Chestertown. And what are we doing with the money? We're using it to subsidize services in the non-municipal areas. I don't know how anyone can justify overtaxing lower-income people for the sake of subsidizing services on upper-income people. And if you've got numbers to show me where I'm wrong, please, I will read them. I would love to read them. I've never seen them. Let me come down just a moment. Somehow I lost my, here's the keyboard. This was a study done in 1997 by Mr. Turbala, government consultant working with the Institute for Government Service, University of Maryland, College Park, 1997. I don't think anything was done with that study. It was ignored. And if I accomplish nothing else this afternoon, I want to make sure that we don't ignore our most recent study. And we can go back through, we can come up with all the appendices necessary, we can update it as necessary. But to ignore that study, I think is criminal. I really do. To not even read it after you promised to support it. I can't understand that. This is the most recent study. This was March 22nd, 2024. This was done under a contract between the Eastern Shore Association of Municipalities, that's a subsidiary of the Maryland Municipal League. 3 towns, we first hoped that the county would pay part of it, but no. Galena, Rock Hall, and Chestertown all chipped in for that study. So what are some of the consequences if we have the highest, and I think we do, have the highest tax rate on municipalities? Let's see. There may be an error in there. When it says second highest, it's not second highest in Maryland. Where we're second highest, we're second worst is on the economic growth rate. I still maintain, and I'll go back through the data, we have the highest tax on municipalities anywhere in the state. You can check with our legislators. We definitely have the highest in District 36. We definitely have the highest on Delmarva. And Kent County's tax base grows so slowly. How are we going to fund the school?
You don't have to, that's totally our problem.
Well, I know, but except that I'm a taxpayer in Kent County, so it's my problem too.
Well,
Okay?
I guess the reason I said that, do you understand that there's a lot of wants out there as well?
I know. Okay? I'm saying, and I appreciate all that you're doing for us, but what I'm really praying that we can all do is work together on this and find a way to increase our tax base. And I'm suggesting that having 89% of the land zoned for agriculture, what that means, what that tells me, please pay more attention to the remaining 11%, the area that really is bearing the brunt of our taxes. We can do this. Other people have done it before us. I have quite confidence in that you can as well. Again, that history isn't promising. These go through individual counties in Maryland. Sorry, 0.58% from 2001 to 2023. Yeah, it's going up a little bit at the end, but I can't be optimistic about that one. What have we got? Somerset County used to be kind of the poorest, the least growth. We got beaten by Somerset, 0.78%. Dorchester County. How is it that it's coming up faster than we are? I don't know what happened in Talbot County. Gosh, that surprised me. You see that big dip with COVID. Worcester County, I would have thought they would be doing better. But look at Wacomico, okay? And some people will say, oh, well, it's so challenging because we're right up against low-tax Delaware. And yet some of the counties right up against Delaware are doing pretty well. Carolina has problems. But look at Queen Anne's, just across the river from us. Now, I'm not going to claim that the high taxes are the only cause of that, okay? There's rarely a silver bullet, one issue. But I'm saying it's a significant one and one we have the power to address. We can't change the fact that we're right next to Delaware. We can't change the fact that Maryland has some of the highest income taxes in the country. What do? We come back and look, what can we change? And you have the power to make the tax policies on municipalities more equitable. You really do. You don't have to get the governor's permission. You don't have to get the attorney general's permission. You have that power right now. Again, Queen Anne's County waited 30 years and they came on board. Come on, it's been 40 years. And there are two arguments. Oh, we need more time and we're too poor. That just doesn't square with the fact that you're overtaxing low-income people to subsidize high-income people. And Cecil County, I'm not sure I want to grow as fast as Cecil is right now. None of us want to live in Middletown, Delaware, or in Elkton, or in Kent Island. But we would like to be able to grow fast enough to pay our bills, fast enough to be able to have some more services for people. And what I'm asking, please sit down with some economists, Maryland, Washington College, it can be Salisbury, place else. Anirban Basu, the same person that you and I sat watching 12 years ago. I met with him a couple of weeks ago, and he says that overtaxing your municipalities is going to hurt you. Okay, it's a major factor in most counties, the municipalities are engines of economic development. I have a study by the Lincoln Land Institute, and they say for every 10% reduction in taxes, you can expect to 16% in economic growth. We can't ignore that. Thinking back, 50 years ago, I was in an economic development class, and they talk about the process that developers go through. And the first is to kind of pick a general region where they have the suppliers of their material, they have markets, they have transportation, they work. And then as they narrow down, they start looking, maybe somebody has narrowed it down to Eastern Shore, and then they come and they look, oh, everything else being equal, Centerville's taxes are so much lower than Chestertown's. Give us a level playing field so we can compete.
You know what, not one other thing too, the reason for Queen Anne's County's success is
Kent
very,
Island.
very simple. It's within commuting distance of working on the Western Shore and making a lot of money and coming over here and getting out of the rat race and coming over here and living in the quiet Eastern Shore. If we were closer, you see what happened when they wanted to put a bridge across the Tilechester, you hear the uproar out of Kent County. We don't want to live like that.
Nor do we.
And we can't compete. I agree with you wholeheartedly. We can't compete with Queen Anne's County. And in the next 2 years that I'm still here, I'm not going to try to compete with Queen Anne's County.
I'm not trying to compete. I'm trying to compete with
But
Centerville.
but you're pointing out that there's this great big difference, and I'm pointing out there's a obvious reason for that growth. Listen, when I first started as a county commissioner here, I had a friend of mine, a good friend, who was commissioner of Queen Anne's County. And we used to compare our budgets all the time. If ours was $30 million, theirs was $60 million. If ours was $40 million, they're almost double all the time. Then when all that growth took place over there, now they're 3+ times. I mean, they've grown in ways. we're trying to get 2 businesses approved out there on 301 that are supposedly going to employ 150 people.
That's
per
wonderful
business.
news. That's good.
We're in court right now because a group of people don't want it.
I-
So it's not as easy as snapping your fingers
No, no,
around
no.
here.
And if you want, for any reason, for me to help with that, I will try to do my best, okay?
Yeah.
I'm agreeing with you that Queen Anne's proximity to the Western Shore is a significant factor. Can you agree with me that having the highest taxes on the municipalities in the state is also a factor in our low rate of economic development?
And the county's tax rates are some of the highest as well.
Yes?
It's, I
But-
mean,
but-
I guess I look at things a little different. You
But-
know,
but could you answer that one
I
question?
grew up playing ball and stuff on a team, and we were all one. The team was we all made out good on good times, and when we lost together.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way I mean, there's some sacrifices being made because 87% of the county is made up in agriculture. There's some obvious sacrifices. What do we do about that?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You want to do away with it?
No, I never advocate that. But when you say you were all one team, okay? I would like to think that all of Kent County, everybody here is a Kent County resident, as am I, okay?
As I.
We're all one team, and yet everybody here puts money into that general fund for Kent County, and it comes out for roads in the county, but not in Chestertown. It comes, okay? That's what that is our concern. We're all one team, like one team, not like seven citizens.
And every dime that we spend on any service whatsoever can be used by the people, the municipalities, just as the same as for the town.
Not
I
for
mean, the
roads,
county.
not for roads, okay? Everybody here, their money goes, and 5% of it goes for your roads in the non-municipal areas. What percent goes for roads in Chestertown?
That'd be zero.
I can't hear. What percent goes for roads in Chestertown?
You choose that, though.
No, we did not choose that.
All right.
I remember when I was sitting here with Chris Serino, and he said, well, you know, the problem is you guys created a town. And no, Chris Serino said, no, I think it was the colonial dudes who did that. It was long, long before. Don't blame us for this. I'm saying we want to be part of that team, and we want to be treated like other members of the team, and we're not.
Okay.
Okay?
Mayor, with all-
Thank you. Yes, you saved some questions.
All due respect, are you about done with your presentation? Because I've been waiting,
I'm great. This is
very,
good.
very
This is-
patient,
I appreciate that.
and I'd like to.
We've been waiting 40 years. I'm waiting.
I'd like to invite you to the table.
Pardon?
Do you mind maybe grabbing a seat there at the
Sure,
table?
sure,
So we
happy
can have
to.
further discussion
No,
real
that's
quick.
fine.
This is something that some of you know that I've attended the mayor's meetings and so forth. And Mayor, I want to reiterate one more time that I have read the study, and actually I've read the study several times.
Good, thank you.
I read the study when you first gave it out. No, I didn't want to spend taxpayer money to pay to have it done. But that's something that we decided not to do at that time. The study and your presentation, you primarily point to two areas of government operations that, for lack of better words, are probably duplicate. One being the roads, and the second being the police, which because of where I came from, I'm very, very familiar with that. They're both very, very important obligations of government to fulfill. But when we're all dealing with these times of uncertainty when it comes to a lot of things, and look, we live in a beautiful county. I've lived here for coming up on 67 years. And It's a very nice place to raise a family, to live. It's safe here. Our crime is minimal compared to what you see, around the country. But in preparation for this meeting, and we had a discussion here earlier during our regular session meeting, was, like Commissioner Fithian said, some very smart individuals, a lot smarter than myself, and I'll just speak for myself. But I mean, they presented two different sides, but the ultimate finding, in my opinion, after listening to what they said, is that there's a way for folks to share resources. In other words, and I don't want anyone to take offense to this, but you have a police department because Chestertown wants a police department. And I've told you that before in our own meetings back and forth. Do I think it's a good idea that Chestertown has a police department? Absolutely. You, as I discussed with you, you have way too many, you have a lot of, not way too many, but you have a lot of special events. Tea Party being one, down rigging, all kinds of special events, just like Rock Hall has. That requires a certain level of security to make sure that everyone stays safe and has a good time. The current level, staffing level of the Sheriff's Office or the Maryland State Police, there's no way that they could handle that. What I would like to suggest that we engage in a conversation about, and I've also touched on snowplows in the meeting this morning as well, because the lady back there in the purple the other night brought it up. Why do they turn around? There might be a way where they don't have to turn around, but we need to engage in a conversation and work as partners in order to see if in fact the county can alleviate that million, whatever it was, $1.9 million in your roads department. Yes, is it going to cost the county more? Sure, because there's more roads. But I asked our Public Works Director this morning at our meeting, or this afternoon actually, if in fact they could handle it with their staff and with their equipment. And he indicated that he would have to go back and reroute everything, but it's a good possibility by joining together, maybe, and look, I'm not trying to take anything away from the town of Chestertown, but well.
You absolutely are. That's your whole argument.
Well,
Let's let him finish.
my argument is I think we can provide the same level of service, both police and roads-wise, by combining or putting it all under one umbrella. And if that makes sense, okay. If it doesn't, that's okay too. But I mean, that's I know because I worked on the police part of it when we met.
Right.
Before I even thought about running for county commissioner. I worked on what it would take to do it. And not just with just Chestertown, but also with Rock Hall, which are the only two municipalities that have police departments. It can be done. It can be done with the same level of service. It can be done with the same level of protection. But that's a choice that the town officials have to make, and we at the county would have to
Right. You'll note that
agree to.
we have never asked for compensation equivalent to paying for each of those police
I know
officers.
you're not.
Okay? What we've asked for is consistent with what's happening, was in the University of Maryland study, which calculated that we were overtaxed by 10 to 15%. That's 600 to 900,000. You'll see that the police or the roads alone is well in excess of that. We're asking for a fraction of that because that study, which we believe was credible, it was independently done, went through, how much does the county provide, how much do we provide? And then out of that came that number. Coincidentally, it did turn out to be almost identical with Centerville, okay? Shouldn't be a big surprise. They have roads, they have police, and so on. And what we would argue, remember, for every dollar of additional property tax we get, you get $2.37. What's good for Chestertown is good for Kent County. It's also consistent with that Lincoln Land Institute study. It's also consistent with what Animan Basu said. I will wager it's consistent with just about any economist at any university out there. That
So,
excess taxes are hurting your economic development, hurting Kent County's economic development, not just Chestertown.
I'm just suggesting to you that we need to engage in more conversation to see if, in fact, there's a way to minimize your costs as a town for your streets, your roads, and your police protection.
Absolutely, we appreciate that.
And it very well may not even be feasible.
But it won't hurt to
But
discuss
it's
it.
worth
We-
a conversation.
Yeah,
It's worth a conversation because I think there is a cost savings. And anytime that you can join your resources, you're going to save dollars. Secondly, as preparation for this meeting, we asked our finance office to try to work with the department heads and identify certain costs that the county pays for services that are given to not just Chestertown, but all of the municipalities. And I've looked at it. I think there's some things that need to be pointed out. Actually, I think this is the piece that's been missing on our part all along.
okay.
Because what this indicates to me is exactly where my reservations are. And Pat, do you have a copy for the mayor?
Sure. Can you put it on the screen?
And we're going to put it up on the screen so everybody can see. And if you wanted a copy, certainly we'd make sure that you get
Okay,
one.
thank you.
But I'm going to ask the person that actually drafted this document to go through it and explain how they came up with what they came up with.
Sure. So I reached out to department heads, and I think, again, I think it's just a piece that's missing from the conversation. I think it's not as simple as maybe the example of the police department. So Chestertown has a police department, and Kent County has a police department. And the argument being that if you're being serviced by the Chestertown Police Department, you shouldn't have to pay for the county. But there's overlap in services. The sheriff's office, 34% of their calls for service are in the municipalities. So the town residents are receiving service from the Chestertown Police Force and from the sheriff's office. So that's where it gets a little bit, it's not black and white issue. So what this schedule attempts to do,
Excuse me, it's not up over here.
we can only get it on.
On one side or the other.
I will make extra copies if anybody wants one on the way out, if you can't see it.
You can't see it.
It's not just Chestertown, these calls you're suggesting, it's the other municipalities, correct?
Absolutely.
You said the time, a municipality, it's all of the municipalities.
Yes, and if you can look at the schedule, you can see, so with the sheriff's office, yeah, 34% of the calls for service are in all of the municipalities.
How about if we have maybe have some copies
You'll
made,
Absolutely.
and we can pass those around if that might be. We want everyone to fully understand what we did here,
Sure. But
to see the numbers.
bottom line, I commend you for pulling up this. I think it is useful to have that information.
Yeah,
And so
and-
that we can discuss in terms of real numbers rather than
Absolutely.
perception. Sure.
And the department heads, the statistics for the calls for service, I mean, they're logged. But if we start at the top of this, the first category on here is emergency medical services, and I think the commissioners spoke to that. 52% of the call volume from our EMS, that's our paramedics and our EMTBs, go to the municipalities, and 48% goes to the other jurisdiction in the county. With the sheriff's office, when you can see the chart there, it's broken down by municipality, but 34% of the calls for service are within the municipalities. Our fire companies, the county legislated a long time ago that it wanted to set a rate that it would fund to the fire companies and consistently pay it. And so we pay .0322 cents per $100 times the assessable base, and that goes to all the fire companies, and you can see the breakout by the municipalities.
Pat, excuse me just a minute. Where does the money come from that you spend?
Comes out of the general
Wild.
fund.
It doesn't
general
come,
fund.
doesn't come from the state?
There is, I
course
think you're
not.
referring to the Amos grant, which is a pass-through grant,
Right.
which is, that comes from the state. This comes from the county general
Oh,
fund.
okay, okay.
And the Amos fund is a much smaller pool of money, so this is almost $1 million.
Can you explain what the population of the county is in the municipalities versus the county-wide? Because you're making it sound like a much higher percentage goes for the county or for the municipalities, but what percentage of the population is in?
So these.
It's not, we're underrepresented in money, but overrepresented in population.
So these stats represent service calls, not population. So if there are more service calls for that service, that's how the allocation was done. Not based on absolute population, but on where the services are being performed.
But about 90% of the population.
Wait a minute now, we're
in Kent
good.
County is
Yeah.
in
Okay,
the
so,
cities, right, the municipalities.
right, but this chart represents, if we were to, the cost of our 911, if we allocated it based on where we're performing services, this is how it would be allocated.
Quick question.
Sure.
I'm not sure, under what circumstances would a county sheriff officer respond to a call for assistance in Chestertown? In other words, where do you make this differentiation between a Chestertown police officer responding versus a county
So I would,
responding?
I would-
How does that come about?
so I would defer to our sheriff to answer that. All I did was get the statistics. So
I can share with you, from my previous position as sheriff, which has only been 2 years ago, I was still a sheriff. There's lots of times, due to the level of coverage in Chestertown and in the county and in Rockhall, where one of your police officers might need to, they might arrest an intoxicated driver for driving under the influence. As a result, that officer is now taken off of the road. He or she has to go all the way to the Centerville Barrack for a breathalyzer. And so there's times when the sheriff's office would, or the state police, but more likely it's the sheriff's office, would actually bring a deputy in from out in the county to help patrol Chestertown in the absence of that officer. That particular situation doesn't happen often, but it does happen. There have been, look, Chestertown, it's a beautiful town, it's a nice town, but it is our county seat, and they seem to have a higher level of, if there were serious crimes that happened here, and unfortunately there are in Kent County, a lot of times they're in the county seat, Chestertown. Now, I'm talking about homicides, and I'm talking about drive-by shootings. Fortunately, we don't have a lot of it, but when it does happen, when I was sheriff, there were many opportunities or requests for us to come in and actually handle the investigation. Only because when you have a small police department, they're very good at what they do. They're very community-oriented, but they sometimes don't have the expertise. Like when I was there, I had a criminal investigation division. And these officers are specifically trained to investigate certain serious crimes. So, I mean, that's the kind of situation where you would have the sheriff's office come in. It doesn't mean they're any better than anybody else. It's just that they have the expertise in certain areas that the local police don't always have available to them.
Joe, I appreciated my meeting with you. You really went out of your way to explain your position, but you're arguing with respect by anecdote, an example. I'm interested in the evidence of the incidents of the calls, all that. I don't see it reflected here.
So,
It's just not there. It needs to be broken down and checked. I'm sorry. An economist, that wouldn't pass.
no, I'm not arguing with you. What I'm saying is that what I got to put this data together was just the call log and the number of calls. So I'm not saying we can't get you more information, but I don't have it for this particular meeting. But the call logs, so maybe if we go through the schedule and then take questions?
Well, I mean, you can go through the schedule, but I think to this gentleman's point, there are at least two pieces of critical information that are missing. You don't have the non-municipality total here, and the total. So you can't determine what percentage of anything.
So I can, I just didn't put it on the schedule, but I
The other thing is, are we talking about fixed or variable costs? Are you just taking the number of calls and taking a percentage of the total budget or total spend?
So with the-
Including the building, including fixed assets?
So
Or
with-
just the cost of the person taking a call or answering a call?
So we took this from a top side. So with the sheriff's office, it's salaries and benefits only, no fixed costs. And if you want the stats on what the calls were, including the county, I can certainly give them to you. I didn't put the county data on here, but I can certainly provide that.
What does it matter? Because we're paying 100% of the county tax. So if you come in here occasionally, fine, we're paying just as much as anyone else.
So,
Actually, correct me if I'm wrong here, but under the agricultural assessment law, it turns out that the assessed value of a farm can only be $500 per acre.
That's correct.
That means that a 1,000-acre farm is assessed at the value of a $500,000 house. And so we wonder why we're not getting many taxes from, relatively substantial amount of rural economic activity.
But that particular rate is not set by the county. That's set by the state of Maryland.
we have no
So
control.
unfortunately,
But
and
how much you tax that assessed value is set by the county.
But
Yes, and we've raised that 1 cent in 24 years.
unfortunately, it's the same rate for ag that it is, the assessed value is different, but the rate is the same.
Listen, I'm gonna step in here just a minute. We're getting a little late here. This is actually a meeting between us and the mayor, and it's not open. We have a question and answer session every week at the end of our meeting. If you want to come in, you got a question, feel free to do so. But we're not going to get bogged down in a bunch of question and answering today. So, Mayor, you're concluded with your.
Okay.
well, I think we would like to run through this list with the mayor so that everyone can hear how we came up with these numbers.
Right, I think that would be very helpful. Again, if we can get the numbers on both sides, sit down with that. I thought, and somebody can correct me, if you find that the University of Maryland made errors and didn't count all the things that you do for Chestertown, then we need to go back and point those out, and we can recalculate.
Okay, but let's get back to this chart.
Sure, well,
Because this has been the missing piece, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
If we can. So, Pat, I think you left off with the fire companies. And Mr. Mayor, the other night, you indicated that when we were talking about the money that the county gave to the fire companies, that came from the state.
Okay.
You do realize now that it doesn't come from the state.
Well, portion of it comes, but if you're counting that, you should count the $400,000 we provided for a fire truck there in what we call the Chestertown Fire Department, but it hardly really serves, it's a first responder on 1/3 of Kent County.
But this is something that we do annually,
Okay,
every year, for all of our fire companies,
okay,
regardless of what jurisdiction they're in. We do it for the rescue squad, we do it for the fire companies. The 911 services, Pat, can you,
Sure. So again, this is based on percentage of call volume. So 48% of the call volume is within the municipalities, and you can see the breakdown there. And 52% is in the remaining part of the county. Economic and tourism development is a huge one. Again, I believe the town still has an economic development.
We do. The Main Street program is our
So-
contribution to that effort.
We asked our Economic and Tourism Development Director what portion of the time her staff spends, and I think that they felt that about 90% of their time was allocated in initiatives that help the municipalities, because that is actually where they spend most of their time.
Is that because that's where they expect most of the development to come?
You could ask them for specifics about their strategic plan, but I would guess.
I think it is, and I think it's a wise decision. It's just not consistent. If we're saying those are the areas where we expect development to come, we need to rethink where we should be imposing such a high tax on the areas where we're trying to attract development. That's my only point.
Okay. Beach and pool operations, the county runs facilities in Betterton, or supports facilities in Betterton, Millington, and Rock Hall. So LoSAP is a program, it's a length of service award program that is offered to the volunteer firefighters. It was a program that the county implemented, I guess, gosh, I can't remember how many years ago, to try and retain firefighters. As you know, we're all struggling with that. So that was something that, a cost that the county absorbed a couple of years ago. High-speed internet access is provided at the anchor sites in all the municipalities. This fee represents those fees for, per anchor site that the county now picks up. I think there was some conversation about public works. The remaining ones on here are public works areas of service that are provided to the incorporated towns. One is pump station maintenance. That occurs in Chestertown, Millington, and Rock Hall. Beach and pool maintenance, that's our grounds maintenance people who clean the restrooms down at Betterton, and maintain the other facilities. The public landing maintenance, those are also public works employees, estimated number of hours that are out maintaining landings within the county or within the municipalities. And then recycling, I think there's some municipal pickup done in Chestertown and Rock Hall, and delivery taken to the landfill. So the supporting statistics behind that I'm happy to share with you. I think that, as Commissioner Fithian said, every county kind of has a unique funding model. Ours is not like Queen Anne's, and it's not like Montgomery. In some cases, there's collaboration of services. In some cases, there's division of services. I think that everybody here is saying today that, it's good to look at it and see if we can do it more economically, if we partner. And I think a lot of our agencies are partnering now.
Pat, would it be possible to put a dollar value on these so that then we can kind of compare? Because we're trying to figure out.
Well, that's what the dollar value is. If you look at this whole schedule, what we're saying is the cost of these services is $4,824, so it's a little.
Okay, each of these are not responses or calls, they're dollars?
These are dollars.
All right.
So this is the cost of the service. So the comments, all right, let's go, if we go back to emergency, let's do the sheriff's office. I guess that was the one we've kind of talked through. So the sheriff's office, 34% of the calls. So there are, the call log was 18,479 calls.
And that's 34% of the calls for all of combined.
Right, so in Betterton, there were 657 calls, and they roughly were 4% of the call volume. In Chestertown, there were 2,735 calls, it was roughly 14.8%. Galena was 938 calls, it was roughly 5%. Millington was 894 calls, it was roughly a little under 5%. And Rock Hall was 1,027, which was a little over 5.5%. The total cost of the salaries and benefits in the patrol and investigation were $2,670,000. If you take those percentages and apply them to the cost of the salaries and benefits, no fixed costs, that would be the dollar allocation of the cost of the sheriff's office services. So that $903, $903,375 represents the cost of 34% of those calls.
Okay.
So
What we will do then is match that up with the total that we spend on public safety and compare it. I don't have all the figures in my head, but right now, pulling off 900,000 over, I think it's about 1.9 million that we spend on public safety. I'll have to check the figures. That still leaves a big chunk
Right.
that we are paying. We are saving the county money. So I look forward to getting these numbers, but I don't think that's going to come out. I'm projecting here, which is dangerous. I don't think that's coming out, going to say, oh, yes, we're made you whole. We've covered all of Chestertown's excess expenses. We're going to make everybody happy that all the money you put in was proportionately reallocated out.
But
I
think-
have some confidence in the analysts that we hired, but I'm happy to look at this data. We really are, and I appreciate you getting it for us.
And I mean, on the other side of it, if we were to say that, that we were going to lower the town rate, but not provide the services, would that model work?
We think in some cases that it will show that you need to continue those services and lower the town rate, and we're happy to go through the numbers with you.
Well, I think what you're looking for, Mayor, is you're looking for about 15%,
That's right.
which comes out to about $900,000,
Exactly.
give or take.
Right, we're reading the same study.
So, I mean, right now, what I'm looking at here is, it looks like, that hasn't been taken into consideration in the study.
I wouldn't, I think you're mistaken, but we'll look at it. We promise to
Yeah,
look at
I
it.
mean, I just think we
Right.
need to take a
Sure,
close
sure.
look at it, because, I mean, and I can tell you, we've had conversations about this. You heard Pat talk about the volunteers. The volunteers for our local fire companies, which is what we count on here.
We're
in
so
this county.
fortunate to have them. They're wonderful.
We are lucky to have them, but they're my age, or Ronnie's age, or your age.
God help
And we're not getting the young folks to actually come out and participate. So at some point, and I've said this publicly in a few meetings, at some point, we're probably going to have to look at starting a paid fire servicing.
We will.
And that is a lot
That
of
is
money.
expensive, and all the more reason that we've got to build our economic base so that we can afford to pay them. We can't go on just limping along and not growing. 0.58% is not going to get us there.
Well, look, I think we've had a very productive
I do
conversation.
too, and I thank you both, all three of you. I appreciate very much.
And-
We look forward to
And I think there needs to
continuing.
be some follow-up.
Mhm.
So maybe we can all take this information, digest it. I'm happy to meet with you whenever you want to meet,
Very good.
anyone here. I mean, I'm happy to meet you for coffee somewhere
Super. I want to
and
leave you with
talk about it.
one last document here. Can I bring? Where did I leave my briefcase back here?
Oh, Mayor,
Yes.
we do have one other suggestion.
Yes, please.
I'm glad you brought that up, Pat.
Yeah.
Pat has done some research, and she just wants to put it out there.
Sure. So, many of the jurisdictions in Maryland have payment in lieu of taxes programs with some of their
Colleges.
colleges, nonprofits. It's something, again, it's a piece of the puzzle. It may be a part of the solution. Washington College has about a little over 900 students when they're here. The population in Chestertown is about, I don't know, just under 5,600. So those students make up about 14% of the population when they're here. The assessable base for the college that they're not paying taxes on would yield about $356,000 in property taxes if Washington College was paying. These arrangements that a lot of municipalities or counties make with these nonprofits is okay, maybe you're not, you don't have to pay, maybe you won't pay the full boat, but can we negotiate something? Because we are providing you services. And they're a huge resident in the town. So I don't know if it's worthwhile to pursue those conversations. But just to give you a point of reference, in the state of Maryland, there's 405 of these agreements within the state, or I'm sorry, within Maryland, yeah. And there's 138 of them in place on the shore. So, I mean, Talbot has a couple in place, Cecil has one in place, Wycomico has many in place. So it's just another tool in the toolbox for how maybe we can
can't imagine.
address this.
I can't
I
imagine
think
not
it's-
talking with them.
Right. I have had engaged in discussions with Mike Sosolsky, the president of the college. As you know, they really got hit hard, and liberal arts colleges all over the country are hit hard, but they're rebounding. What we did ask, we kind of got a not at this time response. You do need to clarify, it's not that the entire campus gets by.
Correct, we only picked up the tax exempt
It's
account.
not based on the ownership, it's based on the use. So
Correct.
if it's a classroom, it's not taxable. If it's an administrative building, it's not taxable. If it's a private restaurant, or if it's land like across from Walgreens, that still is taxable. We also are blessed to have so many nonprofits and churches and this sort of thing in town. So it is something we're looking at. I think it's a very valid point. I appreciate you raising it. Kind of the last thing I want to run by you. We have an impression, our beautiful town, okay, with some beautiful homes out there, and that's left a lot of people with the impression that we are a very wealthy town, and it doesn't matter over tax. I looked up the internet. This is a list of 180 communities in Maryland. They're not all municipalities, but they're all over 5,000, okay? I'll pass it to you. And I'd like you to look for Chestertown. And they're ranked ordered by median household income. Okay?
Ronnie, you want to put all that in?
You're doing fine.
Start at the bottom, save yourself some time.
Here we are, Chestertown. Why didn't you tell me just to go to the bottom, Mayor?
I had to look my way down one by one, looking for Chestertown. I've asked dozens and hundreds of people probably, where would you guess that Chestertown falls on this list? Nobody guessed the bottom. Nobody guessed the bottom, okay? It's the optics here. You drive from here to Rock Hall, you don't see many big homes. Why? Because they're tucked along the Sassafras and the Chester and the Chesapeake Bay. You come to Chestertown, you go to a festival, and you see those big homes right there on the waterfront. You don't see the poor section of that. And I'm saying, please remember that these people also pay taxes. They may not own their homes, okay? But their landlords will pass on the taxes to them. Likewise with businesses. I walked into Big Mix the other day, and I said, I'm here trying to reduce your property taxes by 15%. He said, that's nice, but it doesn't help me. I don't pay taxes. I explained to him, yes, you do. We went through it and how his landlord passes them on along with maintenance costs and this sort of thing. He said, oh, you post, you can go to Big Mix now. That sign is hanging up right there. Please come to the meeting. Learn about tax differentials. He didn't understand. The thing about property taxes, they're one of the most regressive taxes we have. I lose my job, my income goes down, but so does my income tax. I lose my job and my property tax stays the same, or here in Chestertown, it's got likely to go up with the new reassessment. I walked across the street from Big Mix to Women in Need. I had the same conversation with Karen Dionysius. Trying to lower your taxes. Nonprofit, but she rents. Trying to lower your taxes by 15%. She said, I don't pay taxes. I explained it. She's now got that same right there posted. She said, I'll help any way I can. Okay? We've got to remember who we're impacting with this. It's not only unfair, manifestly unfair, it's hurting economic growth in our entire county. I wish we had more people out in the non-municipal areas because they have a stake. They have a dog in this fight as well. please don't tell them that I'm pushing here, that I'm standing up here trying to raise their taxes. I'm not. I'm up here trying to get us to focus on economic growth, not like Middletown, but in the towns here, so that it strengthens our economic base, so that we can provide employment for our young people, and so we can have something to rely on when our expenses rise, as they always will, rather than having to raise taxes. I thank you all. I thank everybody here.
One thing that I would like to ask for as a result of our meeting here today is, could you put together the county
Add it
cost?
to it, sure. And
Add
put a
that to it,
subtotal
and then maybe forward a copy to the mayor, so
Sure.
that I'm sure you and I will be talking.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Look forward to it.
Same here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.